Hello, this is Eli from Mystic Circuits. I'm here at Superbooth showing off some new modules. Right now, one of the things that we've been really excited about is the Portal. Probably our furthest from launch, but one that's been getting a lot of attention. It's a very gnarly distortion. And if we turn this up, we'll hear what used to be some classical music. You can still just barely hear it in the background. This particular wrap knob controls the amount of harmonics that are added to the signal. But unlike a wave folder, a wave wrapper is much harsher and crisper, and it'll give you those sort of sharp transitions like you get on a sawtooth. So the wrap controls the amount of distortion. We also have this tracking knob, which controls roughly how well it works. So you can get some very awful sounds at these low settings. There's a feedback control, which simply feeds the output back into the input, and bias, which will allow you to sort of affect which part of the wave is being wrapped the most. There are these two other outputs, number one being round, which is much quieter. If we turn this down, we'll get more grit to it. It's sort of like a bit crusher, but it's all analog. Basically turns your signal into a stair step. This also reacts with the tracking and bias controls. And then there's this output, which is the strangest one of all, called spike, which basically gives a really sharp trigger whenever you get a new transition. Really good for making sort of high frequency noise washes out of whatever you're sending through it. Let's see, as far as new modules go, we have Tree, which is most likely the closest to coming out. Right now, we have a note sequence, which is being controlled by Tree. It's normally a sequential switch, but it also comes with expanders for the Turing Machine expander modules. So you can hook up these sliders, and it will also be a note sequencer. And it also does gate sequencing as well. Now, what sets Tree apart from most sequencers, you have your normal clock input, right? Pretty standard 8-step sequence. However, we have these shift inputs, which allow you to temporarily shift the position of the sequence by a designated amount. So this one is shift by 4, and you can see the sequence is still moving along, but it's jumping up and down in a sort of distance of 4 steps. If we make that faster, it'll be much easier to see, right? We plug another one into shift by 2. You can see we're starting to get more interesting sort of evolving patterns. And then if, let's see, what was shift by 1? We'll do a new one. Plug a gate into shift by 1. And you're now accessing all 8 of these states without the clock even plugged in. So you can get some really interesting pathways through the 8 steps that you have set up by just driving the whole thing with gates. Our other module, which is also coming out soon, is called Anna. It's an analog logic module, which is a little tough to explain, but basically you put in 2 signals and it will give you 6 signals out, which are a sort of combination of all of those. So maybe if we plug something in from here, do a sawtooth. Are you able to see the oscilloscope pretty? All right. The oscilloscope is the easiest way to show off this module. Basically, let's just listen to it too. Why not? It's down. All right. So we have this output is our what we're listening to. Possibly if I do this, it'll look a little easier. There we go. Now, apologies. Wrong input. So, we have 2 inputs to choose from, which let you attenuate or shift the input. Basically, you can see here, we have the green and blue traces are our inputs, and the red trace is the output, which is just kind of coasting along the minimum of the two signals. This is the maximum of the two signals. This is what would maybe be considered an XOR version of the two signals, which acts very similarly to a ring modulator or a bipolar VCA. This is the difference rectification, which always gives you a positive voltage. Very handy to have that. This one is my favorite. It's a track and hold of both of the inputs with the XOR output. And what happens here is that you get woggle bug sort of step smooth random kind of shapes where you can see at some points it's just passing through this sawtooth, and then at other points it's holding the output. And then we have this output, which I call box. It's a bipolar rectifier, so you're getting a square wave with three possibilities, positive, 0, and negative. So if we listen to that, we get some really nice sort of pulse width modulation kinds of sounds out of that. Yeah, and that's Anna. Besides that, we have some 0 HP modules which are coming out. Whoop. 0 HP is a passive floating modular format which takes no space in your synth. This particular one is a bandpass filter which can be modulated at audio rate. Next one coming out are the bandpass and the high pass, which is somewhere around here. We just released the low pass. And then we have this, which is an envelope follower. It's handy to have these sorts of things. It helps you save space, especially if you're traveling. Like I am right now, it comes in very handy. We have just a normal VCA. Everybody needs another VCA. We have a light-controlled attenuator, which is really nice for being able to control your synth by just waving your arms around, or possibly it reacts to the differences in light in the room. And of course, you have to have a low-pass gate in there for bongo sounds. And yeah, I think that's mostly everything. Thanks a lot for listening.